Okay, we're getting ready to start working on the objective lens, and the first thing that you need to do, as you know from reading the manual, is to grind the plano side to make sure it's absolutely optically flat. We do this because usually plate glass is not very flat, and my experience in doing many of these lenses is it can take several minutes or even a little longer to get the plano side really flat, and then of course you have to polish it. So we get ready to do this by sticking the one it's going to become the lens in the water so it'll stick to the paper, and then get ready with the tool. So this is going to be the lens and this is the tool, and we take the 800, the finest, and put just a little on it. Now the one problem we have with this very fine grit is it tends to clump near the center, and this is the grinding again, about a 1/2 inch stroke, 1/3 diameter, and you go the star pattern and you rotate the tool on top the opposite way you're going to move the lens down there. So you just keep doing this, and as we say, you go through the grinding till the grit stops grinding. Now you can see how, maybe you can see this, I don't know, that the grit has tended to concentrate in the center. What you do is push it off to the side and start again. And this is just because the stuff is so very fine. Now you need to periodically rotate the bottom one in the opposite direction you're going. And you keep doing this for a while. And I'm going to flip this before I check it, just because to make sure that you do every once in a while grind with the lens on top and the tool on the bottom. This is to ensure that you don't start generating a curve, which we want this to be flat. So you must spend as much time with the tool on top as you do on the bottom. And don't worry about the stroke. There's a certain irregulariness that you can, again, you see the grit wants to go towards the center. So just push it around. Okay, now we've ground on this for a while, and now is the time to see where the high spots and low spots are. And what you'll see when I do that is that the high spots will be ground dull and the low spots will still be shiny. And of course you keep this process up long enough so that it's completely uniformly ground. And again, since this is such fine grit, it tends to get moving towards the center. Okay, I'm going to stop and see how we're doing, because there's no use spending more time on this than you have to. And if your arms are clean, you can just wipe them off this way. Okay, now on the tool, I don't know if you can see this or not.
Okay, let me just get in here.
The tool is finely ground in the middle.
Just hold it there. Let me see if I can get a.
But the edges are still a little shiny.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's visible. Yeah.
But it's actually quite flat. I'm surprised. This plate glass seems to be quite flat, much flatter than the usual stuff I've used. Okay, so I'm going to continue until we have everything uniformly ground. So I'll do the whole thing again, add a little water, and just a tad of this. This goes a little of this goes a long way. Also, make sure you're always grinding on the same side. Check it. And this is the side we're interested in. And this is the lens in my hand. see again how the fine grit tends to stay at the center. Yeah, this is remarkably flat plate glass. I've never seen it go this quickly. Now that's not to say that the blanks that you received for your telescope will be as flat as these are, but maybe they will be. We got this glass given to us by a local plate glass producer, and maybe it's flatter than most stuff, I don't know. Again, you need to rotate the bottom and make sure the grit is uniform. I don't know, I've been grinding for a couple of minutes now, 3-4 minutes. You might take double this. Now let's take a look. Since this is pretty flat already, maybe we won't have to spend too much time. See, what's going to become the lens is now very, very, very finely ground everywhere. It's dull everywhere. And the tool is now, I don't think you can see that, but the tool is also now completely finely ground. So we're ready to go downstairs and start the polishing. So, okay, now I'm going to clean.
Okay. Yep.
What we have here, I've been doing this for some time, and so I already have pitch in this, and that's part of an old lap that I've thrown in there. And the main thing is, as we show you here, I put standoffs so that this doesn't get too hot, because I can't control the temperature of this little plate. As you can see, I've done a lot of this kind of work. Anyway, make sure you're always stirring the pitch, because if you don't, it will, because it's so viscous, it doesn't mix very well, and you will end up with the pitch getting too hot on the bottom, and it may boil, and you do not want this. The reason you don't want it to boil is it loses the turpentine that's in there, the volatiles, and it will become very brittle and be very too hard, and that will scratch and instead of polishing your lens, it will actually do damage to it as you're trying to polish it. And I keep pushing down. Now, when you first put the pitch in, of course, it will be the block of pitch the shape of the tub, and so it'll look a little different. But you keep stirring the thing around and making sure that the pitch that has melted on the bottom is squished up to the top. So, and this stuff that I had thrown in there from an old lap will eventually melt in there too. And you'll see there's still a glob. You have to continually stir. It takes quite a while to melt this stuff. Now this is more pitch, a little bit more than we send you, so it won't take quite as long. But again, this is pitch from earlier lenses that we made. Okay, why don't you kill it for now for a little bit.
Okay, well.
Okay, this is almost melted. You see there's still a little glob, and of course it is warm, so your hand will get hot, as mine is. But you want to get it completely melted in there. What we're going to do in a minute, as soon as there's a nice bee buzzing around here right now.
Because of the beeswax and the no, it's not. But it sounds good.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is, that's fine. Unplug this. Whoops, the heck is that?
Bee?
No, I see what it was.
Okay.
Okay. Be careful not to spill anything, because pitch is a mess. Phooey. All right.
Okay.
Now, next thing we do is attach the blanks to the spindle. Now, these are spindles we've used before. Yours will be, free of pitch.
Okay, wait, hold on. Show them. Let's just show them again, because
Here are some spindles we've not used. This is what yours will look like. This is for one of the eyepiece lenses. This spindle I've used before for another lens of similar diameter. So the first thing we do, now you got you want to keep the ground side out, so I'm going to stick it to the shiny side. So you stick.
Okay, now let's go. Okay.
And then let some of it drip off. You don't need a whole lot. And then you plop it down and make sure you get it centered properly. Now if you get your fingers in the pitch, which I will be doing shortly, it will stick to your fingers, and it is rather warm. Oh, I don't like to do that. I'll have to get rid of that. And then I will do the next one. Again, this has been used before, so it's already got some pitch on it. Again, make sure that you are putting the shiny side down. I'm getting pitch everywhere today for some reason, which we'll have to clean off before we go to the next step. Okay, now this will stay warm because we're going to make the lap pretty soon. Make sure this is as centered as well as possible and flat. Okay, now I'm going to cool this down under running waters so I can work with it. Try to get some of the pitch off my fingers. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, we have added, where's the bowl of ice? Okay, we have added some beeswax to this pitch to make it not so brittle. And I found as a result, to work with it, you got to cool it down. So what I'm going to do is cool this down and trim that so that we can start to make the lap.
Now you said brittle to make it not so. Yeah, I did the beeswax. Yes, that's right. To make it not so brittle.
Okay.
But then it's a little bit too soft to cut.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is clean this up.
Okay.
Carefully not to scratch the surface that we're going to be grinding on or polishing on. If this is room temperature, it's hard to cut. Okay, and I found that we need to trim this stuff off. Be very careful with this because you can cut yourself. I do this outside where the pitch can go where it wants to.
That's really so his wife doesn't yell at him.
Well, we're in the basement, so. See, if it's cold enough, it'll chip, which is better. If we didn't have the pitch, add the beeswax to it, it would chip off at higher temperatures, but I prefer to having it somewhat less brittle.
For polishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I will go wash my hands because I've got bits of pitch all over myself. I'll be right back.
Okay.
We on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay, we're getting ready to make the pitch lap. I've trimmed all the excess pitch off and cleaned my hands off because it is a mess. So the first thing we have to do, this is a tool. and it will be the lap, is to put a collar, a dam, so that we can make the pitch lap. And we want the collar to stick up above the thing about a quarter of an inch. And as uniform as you can get it. Nothing has to be absolutely perfect in this business. A little tape. Now, let's see if I can fix that a little bit better. It'll stick a little bit to the pitch itself on the edge, but this is fine. Now, as we have over here, you've seen in the pictures the inverted drill and the platform and the little tub that's going to keep this thing from splattering. And what you will do is take the tool, which will become the lap once we put the pitch in there, put it in here and tighten it down. Now, I have made probably 20 lenses like this with this setup, but when Ken and I were making the Galilean telescopes, he built this beautiful machine. And I've been using that since then because this drill has seen better days. And so even though your setup is going to be exactly like this, I'm just going to be doing the work on this machine that Ken made. So what I'm going to do here is stick this down there, and then it's the same thing. It's got the same mechanisms, excepting it's very convenient the way Ken has built this. Okay, back here we have the cerium oxide. I've poured all the cerium oxide from its little container in here, and added some water so we make this slurry. And you keep that covered, obviously. You don't want stuff in there. Now, the pitch is still hot, and I'm going to pour the pitch onto the tool and make the pitch lap. Now, what you want to do is fill it to the point where, and about a quarter of an inch thick, where the pitch is about ready to run over. You want it to be convex upwards so that the whoops, what's going on here? Okay, and I'm covering the pitch since I don't want stuff to get in it. Now, don't get in a rush. That pitch is still quite fluid, and you want it to begin to be stiff, because if you don't and you put the lens on now, if you put the cerium oxide on, the lens is going to stick to it and you're going to have a mess. You can see how it's doing by pushing in on the sides every once in a while, and once it starts to be fairly solid, but not completely solid, we're ready for the next step. So Ken can shut off now.
Let me just mention one thing though about the cerium oxide. Even though we're using this at the very beginning, you will need this at the end for polishing the lens.
Yes.
So take very good care to keep your cerium oxide covered, until so there's no contaminants. You don't want any contaminants getting in there.
Right.
So
in the same sense, I've recovered the 800 aloxite, because if you get junk in there, it'll scratch your lens, or what you're making. So now we just have to wait. So Ken will probably shut the thing off till we get ready to make the lamp.
Yep. Okay.
I think we're about cool enough. You can kind of see, if you look down, when it starts to solidify, instead of being shiny, it looks a little dull. Now I'm going to warm this up, because if I put cold glass on that, it'll too quickly cool off. So I'm going to heat this up a little bit.
So by heating it up, he's just putting it under
water?
Hot water in the sink.
Gotta get hot first. There we go. You don't have to heat it too much. You want to take the chill off it. That should do. Now I'm going to put some cerium oxide on this. Spread it around. Now comes the fun part. You push down and start going around.
Okay, hold on a second. It's hard to see this.
What you're trying to do is get the pitch to conform to the shape of the, in this case, flat. And the cerium oxide should keep it from sticking.
Yeah, hold on.
Now you can see that I haven't got contact at the edges, so I'm going to continue squishing this down. I may have to warm the pitch in the lamp under the hot water to get it to deform. So we can, whoops, aha, that came unstuck. We have to re-stick that on there, but this, okay, that kind of made a mess. Okay. Okay, that's getting fairly decently. Now, you've noticed, because this came off, hopefully this won't happen to you, but if it does, it's not a catastrophe. But you see how that closed then the deformations that were in there caused by that. Okay, I think we are just about ready for the next step. Let me get this as flat as I can. All right, slide this off. Just keep wanting to deform. What I'm going to do now is cut the channels in this thing as we again describe in the text. This has not gone as smoothly as I would like. Now I'm going to cool this. First of all, I'm going to get rid of this stuff as much as I can, the paper. And you can see the lap has squished way over. We've got to trim this whole thing off and cut the channels. So I'm going to cool this off. We can stop filming right now, and I'm going to.
And you're gonna cool it off in the bowl of water with the
ice in it.
Ice in it, yeah. Okay.
Since the lens came off from the tool, we have to redo this. And I'm going to put more pitch on it this time, but you can also just heat it up. I'm sure this will happen more than once during this demonstration, and as such, I'll show you the various techniques for getting it stuck back on. Annoying when things don't go the way you want them, but that's part of the game here. Which means I have to trim it all again and get a mess in my hands. But that's life. All right. That should be fine now. And I'll trim that later after we've made the pitch lap. I see him getting stuck up again.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, now go.
All right, I've trimmed the excess off the edges as I did before. This lap was a little bit lopsided, which I don't like, but it'll be okay. Now I'm going to make 2 channels, and the pattern, of course, is in the manual. You want them off. See, if this were warmer, these would not chip like this. This is kind of the best way to do it. Cut about 1/8 of an inch down, and 1/8 of an inch wide. And you can see the stuff just jumps all over.
Now, one of the things that I do now, Alan, is I use a Dremel tool.
Yeah,
And,
that works too.
yeah.
There are many ways to do this. This is the way I've done it, and whatever way you feel comfortable with. All right, that's the one. Now the other one, you don't want them symmetric. They have to be asymmetric. So one is closer to the center than the other. And they don't have to be perfect. There's nothing about this business which requires everything to be absolutely uniform. Pitch is annoying at times. Now what this does, it allows the pitch paste to flow, because pitch, as you're working, will flow, and these will close up and you'll have to open them up periodically, depending on a number of factors, how fast they do that.
Then open them up with the razor blade.
Same way, just whatever, do this, yep, whichever way you're doing it. Okay, so we've got the lap channeled now, and I'm going to go clean this mess up, and me up.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I've heated the lap under hot water and the lens, and you will of course be doing this on the inverted. Now I'm going to shut this off because I've got to get this lap so it's in contact. And that's best done without the thing spinning. And you may have to heat the lap a couple times to get the good contact.
And that is just heating it in water a little bit warm, warm water, not super hot.
If you don't have good contact, it will polish irregularly, and you don't want that, of course. So the idea is to get the lap in good shape before you start polishing. All right, you see it's not touching here. I'm going to heat this all again and work on it a little bit more. You can tell where it's flat and where it's not.
Okay, so we'll go over just so that they can see this.
Actually, you can do some of this work right here. Getting there. Dang it. This lap is very lopsided. All right, now we've got good contact, but we have to trim the lap again and open the channels. So I'm going to cool it down. I'm going to get some more ice, Ken.
Okay.
So I'm going to leave this here till I get the ice.
Okay. Let me just see if I can get a look at the lap so that they can see how it has closed up. Spin it around a little bit here. Yeah, so that lap has closed up just from him warming it up in the under the faucet, and so it needs to be open as best as possible.
When we're rolling.
We're rolling.
Okay, the lap is pretty good shape now, and I'm going to start polishing. I have recorded this stuff in my log book, and I have a clock so I can see how long I have gone. And you will turn your drill on to very slow, so you have 2 or 3 RPMs, revolutions per minute. Add some cerium oxide, and then using the same stroke as you did before. Now this is going to tug and pull on it, because that tool, or in this case the lap, or no, actually the lens is on the bottom right now, and as I said, you want to switch back and forth doing half the polishing with the tool on top, or I'm sorry, the lap on top, and then the other half of the time with the lens on top. And this is to make sure. Now the amount of curvature you would put in that lens with the 800 grit and with the polishing is essentially 0, but you may as well make sure it's as small as possible by having the tool on top and then the lens on top. So I'm going to give this about 10 minutes, and we can then see how well it's polishing. So again, you turn, you use the 1/3 diameter stroke, or about 1/2 inch in the star pattern, and you keep turning the lap, in this case that I'm holding on top, in the opposite direction that the lens is spinning. Now you will notice it grabs, and so you have to hold on fairly tight. Also, you need to press down with as much force as you can muster, because the harder you push, the faster it's going to polish. Yeah, you can kill it.
Actually, let me just say one thing, that in essence, not in essence, you actually are starting out with polishing. The whole polishing process, working with the pitch and melting and getting the lap just right, this is the hardest part of either making a mirror for a reflector or polishing the lenses in this case. So when you actually do the grinding to get the curvature on the objective, that is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, that's easier.
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
Once you've mastered a pitch lap, although this one has given me more trouble than usual, but once you've mastered it, it's not a big deal. But the first, it's a learning curve. Pitch is a very, whoops, you don't want that to fall off.
Okay, we'll turn it off now.
Okay, I finished 10 minutes and covered the CEO, covered this guy, and I will go wash this off, and then we'll see how we're polishing. Mm-hmm. Again, if your arm is clean, that's the best way to...
Yeah, sometimes just clean it off.
Clean it off. Then we'll go out in the sunlight. Ooh, wow. Okay, we're in the sunlight, and this is beginning to polish very nicely. The stuff in the bottom, that white and the black, is on the other side, but if you see the reflection of the sun, this is polishing very, very uniformly. It's going very nicely, and there's already a decent amount of polish.
Let's see if we can...
Yeah, you can hold it, Ken.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, don't worry about what's on the bottom, it's what's on the top. You can see it's being polished very, very well.
Yeah.
Now, as I say in the text, it will appear to be polished to the naked eye, but you take a hand lens or a magnifying glass, high-powered magnifying glass, you will see that there are pits, and you got to get those out. So just because it looks polished to the naked eye does not mean it's polished. Now, there's going to be probably an hour's worth of polishing, and so this is how it goes. You just do what I did, and depending on how long you can hold it, don't go more than 20 minutes, because the lap will get too hot and deform. But 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes at a time, then let everything cool down and gather your strength back.
Okay.